New York woke up in silence. Not the usual quiet of cold mornings, but the kind that comes before something big. Emily Carter sat by the window, holding the envelope in her hands. Inside, a photo of Nicholas Vance in an unknown location. On the back, a handwritten message. He knows too much. No sender, no clues, just a warning. And Emily knew she couldn't ignore it. Since the end of the preliminary trial, she had become a symbol. The woman who faced the federal circle, exposed Harrison, and challenged the system. But now, the enemy had changed. It wasn't in courtrooms or headlines. It was in the shadows. And if Nicholas was in danger, the network was bigger than they imagined. Rachel entered the room holding a folded newspaper. The headline screamed, "Federal Circle collapses, but a new network rises in the shadows." Emily read silently. One name kept appearing. Orion Group, a shell company based in Luxembourg, involved in security, tech, and media contracts. Little known, but deeply connected. "I've heard that name before," Emily said. Nicholas mentioned it once, but thought it was irrelevant. "Nothing's irrelevant now," Rachel replied. "If they're tied to Harrison, they're tied to everything." Emily opened her laptop and started digging. Orion Group appeared in political donations, intelligence agency contracts, even in sports sponsorships. Like a ghost, present everywhere, invisible to most. Jack Carter arrived minutes later. He brought intel from an old contact, a former intelligence agent who had worked on international operations. "Orion is more than a company," Jack said. "It's a structure, a manipulation network. They control narratives, influence decisions, silence voices." Emily looked at her father. If this was true, they were facing something far bigger than the federal circle. They were facing a global architecture of power. "We need to go to the source," she said. "We need to find Nicholas and figure out who's behind this." Rachel nodded. Jack took a deep breath. "That means leaving the country, entering their territory. Then we go carefully, but we go." That night, Emily received a new message. No text, just a link. She clicked. A live stream opened. Nicholas, in a dark room, spoke directly to the camera. "If you're seeing this, they found me, but they haven't silenced me. Orion Group is behind everything. And there's one name you need to know. Elias Vorn." The image cut out. Rachel paused the video. Elias Vorn, Swiss businessman, owner of a tech holding, founder of Orion. Emily knew the next step was inevitable. They had to go to him. They had to understand what he knew and what he was willing to do to keep it hidden. Days later, Emily flew to Zurich with Rachel. Jack stayed in New York, coordinating the support team. Upon arrival, they were met by Luca, an investigative journalist who had worked with Nicholas. "Vorn is untouchable here," Lucas said, "but there's a conference tomorrow. He'll be there. You'll have a chance to see him up close." Emily devised a plan. She would enter as a representative of a fictional NGO created by Miriam, a cryptography expert and Jack's ally. Rachel would pose as her assistant. The goal: observe, record, and if possible, confront. That night, Emily looked up at Zurich's sky. She knew she was entering enemy territory, but she also knew she couldn't back down. Nicholas was in danger, and the truth still needed a voice. Zurich felt too calm for what was about to unfold. Emily and Rachel walked the streets with calculated steps, watching every movement around them. The International Digital Security Conference was gathering leaders, executives, and experts from around the world. And among them, Elias Vorn, the man behind Orion Group. The plan was simple. Emily would enter as a representative of a fictional NGO created by Miriam Torres, a cryptography expert and Jack's trusted ally. The NGO advocated for digital transparency and information freedom. A perfect cover to draw attention without raising suspicion. At the hotel hosting the conference, Emily scanned the list of speakers. Vorn was scheduled to speak at 2 p.m. Topic: security, freedom, and the future of information. Ironic, she thought. A man who manipulates data and narratives speaking about freedom. Rachel adjusted the hidden microphone under her blouse. Emily did the same. Everything would be recorded, every word, every gesture. Nothing could be missed. At 1:45 p.m., they entered the auditorium. The room was packed. Business leaders, diplomats, journalists. Emily recognized a few faces from American politics. People who had seemed distant from the plot. But here they were, listening to Vorn. He stepped onto the stage with firm posture. Tall, gray-haired, calculating eyes. He spoke with eloquence, citing statistics, trends, and risks. But beneath the words, Emily saw control. Every sentence was crafted to shape opinion, to build consensus. As Vorn spoke, Rachel noticed a man at the back of the room, discreet, hooded, watching everything. Emily looked and froze. It was Nicholas. Without hesitation, she stood and walked toward him. Nicholas recognized her, but didn't smile. He looked tense, exhausted. "Are you okay?" Emily asked. "I am, but not for long. They know I'm here. We need to leave. Now." Nicholas handed her an envelope. Inside were documents, records, contracts, proof that Vorn wasn't just funding campaigns. He was coordinating global disinformation operations. "This is everything I gather before going dark," he said. "But be careful. Vorn isn't just a businessman. He's a strategist, and he never plays alone." Emily tucked the envelope away. Rachel scanned the room. Security was already shifting. They had to leave before being intercepted. They exited through a side hallway, entered a service corridor, and slipped out a back emergency door. Nicholas pointed to a car parked nearby. They got in and drove off. During the ride, Nicholas explained everything. Orion Group operated in layers. Shell companies, government contracts, partnerships with digital platforms, all designed to control the flow of information. And Vorn was the conductor. Harrison was just a pawn, Nicholas said, a middleman. But Vorn, he built the network, and now he's expanding. Emily listened in silence. What they had was explosive, but she knew that if they published it without preparation, they'd be crushed. They arrived at a safe apartment rented by Luca. There, they analyzed the documents. Rachel cross-referenced the data with public records. Everything matched. Names, dates, amounts, and more. Mentions of U.S. senators, media executives, tech CEOs. "This changes everything," Rachel said. "It's no longer about the federal circle. It's about a global structure." Emily called Jack. She explained what they'd found and asked Miriam to begin assembling an independent task force. They needed experts, lawyers, journalists, people who could validate, protect, and publish the information safely. Jack agreed and started making calls. Meanwhile, Nicholas revealed something even more alarming. A digital purge was underway. A coordinated cyber attack aimed at destroying files, breaching servers, and silencing voices. "They'll strike soon," he said, "and if we're not ready, everything will be lost." Emily took a deep breath. Time was short, but they weren't alone anymore. That night, Rachel received an encrypted message. It was from Miriam. 2 servers linked to Orion had already been breached. Data wiped. Sources compromised. "It's begun," Rachel said. "They're cleaning house." Emily looked at Nicholas. "We need to get back to New York, and we need to protect everything." Nicholas nodded. He knew the next chapter would be even more dangerous. At the airport, they used false identities, boarded a night flight. During the trip, Emily reviewed the documents. Each page revealed a new layer, an unexpected connection, a familiar name. And she found something that made her stop. A contract signed by Elias Vorn and a U.S. senator. A name she knew well. A name that had seemed untouchable. "This will blow everything wide open," Emily said. Rachel looked over. "Then we need to be ready for the fallout." Emily closed the envelope, stared out the airplane window, and thought, if the top is higher than we imagined, the fall will be even greater. The plane touched down in New York under a light drizzle. Emily, Rachel, and Nicholas exited discreetly, avoiding cameras and curious eyes. The envelope with the documents was secure, but time was against them. Orion Group had launched a digital purge, and every minute counted. In the car, tension filled the air. Nicholas stared out the window. Rachel typed furiously on her laptop, trying to access servers before they were compromised, and Emily silently mapped out their next steps. Back at the Brooklyn office, Jack was waiting with Miriam and 2 cybersecurity experts. The independent task force was now fully operational. "They've already hit 3 servers," Miriam said. "We lost some records, but we managed to save the core files." Emily handed over the envelope. Miriam scanned the documents, cross-referencing them with the surviving data. Then a name surfaced, one that changed everything. "Senator Alan Whitmore," she said. "He's in the contracts, meetings, transfers, and in direct messages with Elias Vorn." Jack stood up. He knew Whitmore well, a powerful, discreet politician with a spotless reputation, always seen as moderate and balanced. But here, in these documents, was his signature, his voice. "This is going to blow up," Jack said, "but we need to be sure. We need to lock everything down before we go public." Rachel agreed. The team began working on multiple fronts: legal validation, technical analysis, source verification. Emily coordinated it all, knowing time was short. That's why Emily recorded a short video and posted it on her social media. "I'm not here for fame. I'm here for truth. And for everyone who's been silenced." The video went viral. The response was immediate. Journalists, activists, and everyday citizens began mobilizing. The hashtag #InvisibleWeb dominated the internet. Pressure on Whitmore intensified. Meanwhile, Nicholas revealed another disturbing detail. A meeting was scheduled between Vorn and representatives of a U.S. tech company. The goal: secure a digital security contract for public schools. $1 billion deal. They're expanding, Nicholas said, and using education as a front. Emily took action. She contacted a senator who had supported the Federal Circle investigation. She explained the situation and asked for help blocking the contract. "If we stop this deal," she said, "we weaken Orion and show we're watching." The senator agreed and initiated an emergency review. Jack called allies in Congress. The invisible web was becoming visible, and the world was about to learn who was really at the top. The day began with tension in the air. Emily woke early. The names listed weren't just powerful, they were untouchable. Senators, CEOs, national security advisors, people who shaped global decisions, now exposed on paper. At the office, Miriam and Rachel cross-referenced the data with public records. Jack coordinated calls with congressional allies. Nicholas, still shaken, helped organize the files. The task force was in full swing, but time was the enemy. "We need to publish this," Rachel said. "But strategically, if we dump everything at once, they'll crush us." "I agree," Emily replied. "Let's release it in phases. First the contracts, then the names. Finally, the international connections." Miriam proposed something bold: a secure, decentralized platform where the documents would be released gradually with legal and technical validation. A space where journalists, lawyers, and citizens could follow, investigate, and share. "If they control the media," she said, "we need to build our own narrative." Emily approved. Within hours, the platform was live. Name: Truth Network. Simple interface. Encrypted content, controlled access. The first release dropped at 2 p.m. Contracts between Orion Group and U.S. tech firms tied to government agencies. The reaction was immediate. Journalists began digging. Citizens started sharing, and the names began to circulate. But the counterattack came fast. At 5 p.m., a cyber attack hit the platform. Overloaded servers, breach attempts, bots flooding disinformation. Miriam acted quickly, isolating systems and reinforcing security layers. Rachel managed user communications, explaining what was happening. "They're desperate," Jack said, "which means we're hitting the mark." Emily received a call from her Senate ally. His voice was tense. "Whitmore is moving. Closed-door meetings, international calls. He knows he's exposed." "And Vorn?" "Radio silence. But sources say he's in Washington." Emily turned to Rachel. "Then it's time to go there." The next day, they flew to D.C. The mission was clear: deliver the documents directly to the Senate Ethics Committee and ensure the investigation was officially launched. Upon arrival, they met with a team of lawyers and investigators. Emily presented the files, explained their origin, detailed the connections. Rachel added technical context. Miriam showed evidence of the cyber attack. "This isn't just corruption," one lawyer said. "It's a parallel power structure." The committee began an emergency review and scheduled a preliminary hearing. Meanwhile, the Truth Network released the second batch. The names: senators, executives, advisors. The list was long, and it shook the political landscape. Protests erupted in multiple cities. Groups demanded broad investigations. Others called for immediate resignations. And many simply chanted Emily's name. But she wasn't seeking the spotlight. She was seeking justice. That night, she received a new message. A video. Elias Vorn in a luxurious room, speaking directly to the camera. "Truth is relative. Power is inevitable. You may try to expose us, but you'll never destroy us." Emily watched in silence. Rachel paused the video. "He's provoking. He's trying to show control, but he's cornered." Jack entered with urgent news. Whitmore just resigned, and Vorn was seen boarding a flight to Geneva. Emily knew the net was closing, but the game was far from over. The next day, the Ethics Committee announced the opening of a formal inquiry. Emily was summoned to testify. At the Capitol, she walked the halls with steady steps. Cameras tracked her every move. Journalists tried to approach. She said nothing. In the hearing room, she sat before the senators. The committee chair began. "Ms. Carter, Do you confirm that the documents submitted were obtained from independent sources and validated by experts? I do, and I can provide the reports. Are you aware of the political impact this case is generating? I am. But I also know that truth cannot be negotiated. Silence filled the room. One senator stared at the papers. Another adjusted his mic. Then the chair declared, "This committee acknowledges the seriousness of these allegations and authorizes a formal investigation into the individuals named in the documents." Emily left the room with Rachel and Jack beside her. The crowd applauded, but she didn't smile. "It's not over yet," she said. Rachel looked at her. "But it's close." Jack placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "You made history." Emily gazed at the horizon. "Now we have to make sure it's not erased." Night fell over Washington with a restless silence. Emily sat in her hotel room, staring out at the city skyline. The Senate hearing had been just the beginning. The formal investigation was underway, but she knew real power didn't sit in public chambers. It hid behind curtains, contracts, and diplomatic smiles. Rachel entered the room holding her phone. The Truth Network is stable. Traffic doubled in the last 24 hours. Journalists are starting to publish their own investigations based on the documents. Emily nodded. That was the goal. Decentralize truth. Make it unstoppable. Jack called from New York, coordinating the team's security. "We got an anonymous tip. A group linked to Orion is trying to trace the IPs of contributors to the platform. We're rerouting everything through mirror servers. They're trying to identify who's with us," Emily said. "We need to protect everyone involved." Nicholas, across the room, was analyzing a new batch of files. He found a string of emails between Elias Vorn and a name that hadn't surfaced until now. Senator Douglas Reeve, one of the longest-serving members of the Intelligence Committee. Respected, untouchable. "This changes everything," Nicholas said. "Reeve isn't just complicit. He's the bridge between Orion and the state apparatus." Emily leaned in. She read the emails. Direct orders, contract approvals, interference in investigations, all with official seals. If this gets out, it won't just be a political scandal. It'll be an institutional crisis. Rachel scanned the documents, and maybe that's exactly why we need to release it. The next morning, Emily called a press conference. Not in a studio, not on a network, but in front of the Capitol, with independent journalists, activists, and everyday citizens. No filters, no scripts. She stepped onto a small makeshift stage, took the microphone, and spoke. "For months, we've faced threats, attacks, and attempts to silence us. But we kept going because we knew truth isn't a luxury. It's a right. Today, we present evidence that members of the highest levels of the U.S. government collaborated with an international manipulation network. That network, called Orion Group, continues to operate in the shadows." The crowd applauded. Cameras streamed live. Social media exploded. Emily continued. "We're not here to destroy institutions. We're here to save them. To remind everyone that power without transparency is tyranny, and that silence will never be stronger than truth." At the end of the conference, she handed the documents to the press and published the third batch on the Truth Network, the emails between Vorn and Reeve. Hours later, Congress announced the formation of a special committee to investigate Orion Group. The Department of Justice launched inquiries. Elias Vorn's name was added to an international watch list, but the response came swiftly. That night, Emily received an envelope. No sender. Inside, a single photo. Her, Rachel, and Nicholas walking down a street in Zurich. The image was recent. On the back, a handwritten message. "We know where you are." Rachel sealed the envelope carefully. "They're watching us, even now." Emily took a deep breath. Then it's time to flip the game. She called Miriam, asked her to activate the final protocol. Full release of all files in multiple languages to international media outlets. If truth was a weapon, now it would be global. The next morning, newspapers across Europe, Latin America, Asia, and Africa ran headlines about Orion Group. The invisible web was now visible, and the world began to respond. But Emily knew the battle was far from over. As she walked through the streets of New York, surrounded by stairs and cameras, she received a new message. A short video. Elias Vorn, in an unknown location, said, "You want a battle? But the war is long, and we have allies where you least expect." Emily closed the phone, looked out at the horizon, and whispered, "Then let's find out who's really at the top."